good afternoon. So today is the 1st of July, or it will be at least when you're watching this video. And if you don't already know, you haven't seen the first part of this little mini-series we're doing on the cars, the Professionals. I am with Mr. Andy Shaw. We are at the annual Dead Man's Treasure Hunt weekend for The Avengers, another series made about that time. It is a closed event, it's invitation only, so don't write to me and say, where can I find tickets on Eventbrite, because you won't be able to do that. We're in Letchmore Heath near Watford, which is a location for the Professionals episode, It's Only a Beautiful Picture. We would have parked closer to what in the episode called the Sangster Arms, but it's part of the show is a nightmare. It's not like you see it on screen. Busy. It's so busy around here. Or near the pond. Again, we couldn't get a space there, so we're just around the corner in a sort of quieter area. So we can talk to all of you wonderful viewers who love the Professionals.
Yeah.
In the first episode, we looked at the main cars used in the 5 series of Professionals by the main cast, which would be Bodie, Doyle and Cowley. We're now going to take a look at some of the what I call the guest cars that only appeared for maybe like 1 or maximum 2 episodes at a time. Some of them were driven by the main cast, some of them were not. And I've listed these roughly in alphabetical order, although there are some exceptions to that.
Yeah, so in the series we went through the early days, which was British Leyland cars.
It was wonderful, wasn't it? That worked out well, didn't it? That worked out really well.
Fantastic.
I know, yeah.
And then we went to the middle of the series where they got sponsorship from Ford, and Ford started giving them cars. And then towards the end of the series, they got up to the minute Ford cars and everything was roses. And these are the cars that played out alongside of those other cars.
Yeah. So one of the kind of main sort of guest card, I suppose, because it's used throughout most of the episode, in an episode called Blind Run from the second series, is a 1968 Vanden Plas 4-litre limousine. Do you remember that car from that episode, Andy?
I do. That's the one. He got shot at the end, didn't he?
He gets. Yeah, the chauffeur he gets shot. And I think he's killed. It's some implied that he is.
And we had that huge guy Tinkerbell.
Yeah, that's the episode.
Yeah, he was at a convention the other year. He's still alive.
He was, yeah, he's still alive.
If you watch the episode, yeah, it looks pretty much the same as well.
Yeah, he does. He's quite funny. He sounds the same too.
Yeah.
So they really rag that car, don't they? Like it does jumps and it gets shot and it does multiple crashes.
The thing is, they know something that you don't, because when they started to film that episode, they knew that car was going to die in some fireball right at the very end. So they didn't care what they did to it or how badly it got damaged.
Yeah, I know.
And it gets worse and worse, doesn't it, as the series goes on?
So crazy. That one's VLA 83G. It's a very late Vanden Plas. They stopped making them in '68 when British Leyland came in. So clearly it was 10 years old. It was just a disposable car, and that'll be a theme we keep going through. But as we look at these gas cars,
they got it cheap, without a shadow of a doubt. They bought that cheap.
Yeah. Another one of these like kind of knackered old cars, although it looks actually worse than it is in Runner from the I think it's the second or third series. It was filmed in '79 anyway, so I think it's probably on the sort of the third series. Is a Austin Morris 250JU van. It's like a blue colour. It's like it's been hand painted, isn't it? It's. Do you remember that van?
I can't remember that one. Oh.
Yeah. But when they go to Black Park, which is near Palmer Studios, it gets stuck on the edge of the lake, and you see this terrible wheel spin it has, and he can't get it up.
They didn't have a limited slip diff in that one.
He did not. No. I mean, there's a very old design of van. It's '73. It's XXE 377M. It looks a lot older than it is. It would have only been 6 years old at the time, but it looks knackered and old in that, doesn't it? Surprised they don't crash it and burn it, because that's what normally happens to that sort of stuff.
Normally goes off in a huge bang, and there's a fire like somebody's let off 50 canisters of propane gas all at once. Isn't
that
it?
Doesn't happen with that particular one. Just some wheel spin. Another car that's used in lots of action sequences is a 1952 Bedford M-type truck in Weather Jungle Lens. Which is a very early first series episode. Do you remember that big lorry they used to do bank raids in?
No, I can't remember that one, Joseph. I'm sorry. I think I kind of Was that the one that got held up? Did they get held up in it and
Yeah.
forced out?
No, but they drive to an airfield. They do a bank raid and they drive to an airfield in it.
Right.
And they basically just like the police try to stop it and they don't.
Because it's too big.
It's too big, yeah. I think it's an ex-army truck, that one. It was very old. What's it? MXV 716. It's a very old sort of truck for the time. And the episode was filmed 77, so it would have been 25 years old at the time. It looks very old-fashioned anyway, that one.
Is that the one with Poirot in it?
Yeah, that's it. David Suchet himself.
David Suchet.
Yeah,
yes.
He's balding even then. It's amazing. It's amazing the way he looks. So some of the acting for David Suchet, to be honest, I love David Suchet. I think he's great. But in that episode, it's a bit hammy.
He's refined his technique by the time he does Poirot.
Yeah,
that's for sure, hasn't he?
He has, hasn't
Yeah.
he?
I do remember that truck now. Yes.
Another car that's in Blind Run is a really, really rare car. It's a 1967 Chrysler Valiant, an Australian Chrysler. Do you remember that one? Again, it gets totally trashed.
No,
It's sort of blue with a black vinyl roof. It's one of the villains' cars.
Oh, right. I'm struggling with that one. Sorry. Yeah. But I do remember the truck.
Yeah, you remember the truck. Blind Run is all about sort of damaging cars. And that Chrysler, when they're driving around a 9 Elms freight yard in Battersea, which is now a nice new development that's going up, and at the time it was a rail freight yard, it gets trashed. Along with the Austin Prentice limousine, it gets totally Vandenplatte
Doesn't it go down like off a
Yeah,
landing
yeah,
dock or something
and
lands? And
yeah.
you can see it break in half like that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then the next minute it's back together again.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Who knows? Was it XXO 585? They really trashed a lot of cars in that episode, didn't they? Loads of them. One of the car that is sort of trashed for a different reason is in the episode Weekend of the Country, which is a season 4 episode. Gordon Jackson has to fly in by helicopter to a place to pick up a car in the country, so he's not in his normal Granada, and they provide him with a different car, which is like a hire car, which is a 1978 Chrysler Alpine. And he almost has an accident. You can see it in the episode. He almost has an accident where he fails to look when he's pulling out, and he's like about to burn the clutch out. But a little kind of Simca engine is going, and he almost has a crash. It's really funny. Do you remember that?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, it's hilarious, isn't it? Not this sort of, I don't know, the best quality products that the Chrysler were making at the time, I have to say.
No,
not really. So that one's YLX 720S from Weekend in the Country. If we look at the final series of the Professionals, Series 5, although this episode was filmed as the fourth film block, is a bit confusing, but anyway, there is a Datsun 180B. Do you even remember what one of those is, Andy?
I do. Yeah. With the round headlights, set in like a square.
That's right. Yeah.
And they had a sticker in the rear window saying "OK," and signed by the
Datsun,
chairman of Nissan or something like that. That the car was a top quality product. Loads of extras. They were just loaded with everything that nobody else had. You had an electric aerial. You had a radio. You had 3-speed wipers. You had all things that were a standard that you had to buy as extras or retrofit onto other models, and it was your traditional family car. The big problem with them was rust.
Like a lot of cars in the 70s.
They only lasted about 3 or 4 years.
I know.
At that point, it was an MOT failure on rust grounds. It might sound bizarre now because cars now are all galvanised and last forever. But back then they weren't, and they were very economical with applying paint as well. Not all areas of the car were painted. Result, misery.
Yeah, I mean, Japanese cars of the 70s were known for having, good quality, high standard equipment, but also just being really, really bad with the rust.
Utterly reliable. The thing would never break down. It would go forever, but the bodywork always fell apart first before you spent anything on the mechanicals. Yeah.
So the car's actually used in 2 episodes. It's used in the Aduca situation from the 5th series, and it's also used in Runner, which I think is a 3rd series episode. I could be wrong, but I think it's a 3rd series one. The real plate on it was FLA 941T, but also in Runner you see use that plate and a fake plate too, for some reason. Who knows why?
They forgot.
UMD 25p is a fake plate on it. I don't know why. I think they're filmed on 2 different days, because you kind of see with the casino raid in Runner, it's raining 1 minute and then it's dry the next, and it's clearly 2 different days. That episode's got loads of action in it. That's a really good one. The Datsun's blue. Let's talk about Ford Cortina Mark IIs for a second. There were a couple of Ford Cortina 1600Es actually in the Professionals. The one I remember most of all, and one that I mentioned in my walk around of the Bromley pageant that I did on the 23rd of June, was a car used by the one and only Norman Eshley in an episode called Kickback, which is like a gold colour. Do you remember that episode, Andy?
Just remind what was Kickback about, Joseph?
It is about, it's actually quite complicated. It's about like an Italian group of sort of terrorists who are in with Norman Eshley, who's a bit of a bad apple. And, he tries to recruit Bodhi into being part of a terrorist group. Do you remember that now?
Yeah. And Bodhi gets accused of being too sympathetic.
Yes. He does. He
falls for the girl and everything. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, he does. And the car that Norman Ashley has to drive around keeping a low profile, and he also has a Land Rover in it. But the car I want to talk about more is his Ford Cortina 600E, and at the time this car would have been 11 years old. It's like a gold colour, and it still looks the kind of business, doesn't it? Even though it's sort of old.
They're great cars. Do you know my next door neighbour bought a brand new Ford Cortina Mark II 1600E, and he gave me a lift to school in it. And I always remember how super smooth the ride was. It was like you were gliding along. I promise you, it's like the latest Japanese car now. You didn't feel any lumps and bumps. It was all very smooth. A little bit wallowy, but very, very, very smooth ride, and very quick as well. So for its day, it was a quick car.
Yeah, sure. Whoever chose the cars in Professionals must have really liked them, because in the series 2 episode Rogue, there's also one of them in there too. This is I think it's just like a grey or silver colour, which is SJB 150G. The one in Kickback is ORK 817H. Now, they're looking a bit worse for wear at the time, but those are super valuable now, aren't they?
Oh, good Lord, yes. If you've got anything that's like in the fast forward category, then it's just astonishing the prices that they go for. I mean, if you've got something like a Mark 1 Escort RS2000 or a Mark 2 RS2000 or a Mexico, you're absolutely in the money. You'd be astounded by how much you can get for one of those cars. And that price hike has kind of pulled all of the others up with it. So now if you've got, say, a Sport or a 1600E, then again, those prices have been pulled up by the models above them. So the Lotus Cortina was the one to have in the Cortinas, and if you had one of those, it had a twin cam Lotus engine in it, and it did you could tweak that engine and have utterly blistering performance out of it in what was effectively a very light car, but that handled very well. But if you've got anything, it's now described as a barn find, and you'll take it to auction and you will get a real surprise how much it fetches.
I mean, those were just like common street furniture at the time. Jeremy Clarkson's first car was a Mark II 1600E. That's what he had as his first car. He didn't pass his test in it. It was a Bentley that he passed his test in, but that was his first car as well.
You couldn't have that now.
No. Talking about disposable street furniture, in the Professionals as well, they have a range of Mark III Cortinas. I'm not going to go in number plates of all of them, but a lot of them get destroyed. Blackout, there's a blue one that gets destroyed. In Kickback, there is another blue one that gets destroyed. It sort of falls over, and its driver gets shot by by Bodhi from a helicopter. It's a great episode, actually. It's brilliant. And in Private Man's Public Danger, which is the first episode that was broadcast, wonderful Keith Barron, he also has a Mark III Cortina. It's like a very rare, it's a 3-door one, and it has a massive accident in a farm. And you see this huge dent in the wing.
Yeah, I remember that one.
As he's coming out.
Yeah.
They were just so sort of disposable. I mean, we'll go later on into what I think was the car that was the favourite one to destroy in the Professionals of all.
And I think I know what you're going to say.
I think you do, Mr. Shaw. One of the things that the Professionals can be guaranteed to do is abuse cars, and there were a couple of Cortina estates. One from Close Quarters, that was the first series. That was SLE 16R, very similar to the Capri from the Titles of Mind, wasn't it? It was SLE 71R. I don't know if those were Ford press cars or not, because that doesn't sound to me like they were, but possibly. But Lewis Collins kidnaps somebody in Close Quarters, a terrorist, and he forces Gabrielle Drake, the amazing Gabrielle Drake from UFO as well, and he forces her to drive it, and she drives like a pro. This stolen Mark IV Cortina estate in brown with a rubber dinghy on the roof. That's
hilarious.
It is brilliant, and they've been chased by this Audi 80, which is a bizarre chase car to sort of have. But I think it's because the terrorists were German; they gave them a German car to chase in. And then in the Acorn Syndrome, which is a sort of similar thing. It's another Cortina estate. It's a really, really, really early Cortina 80 or a Mark V. I think they filmed it September 1979. In this area as well, actually, in this sort of part of the world it was filmed. And when they rounded a corner at the end of the chase, where the desk has fallen off the roof.
I was going to say, is that the one with the desk on?
It is. The desk falls off the roof.
The desk slides off. All the drawers fall out first, and then the desk.
It's a different part of the area around Watford. I think it's Oxley or something like that. They come around the corner, and Lewis Collins smashes the car against the curb, and apparently that one needed a suspension rebuild after he did that. That one is HPU 754T.
And didn't Shoestring have a yellow Cortina estate?
He had a Mark III Cortina estate.
Yeah, that he drove as well.
So he had a Mark III.
One was Shoestring's car as well.
That's right. So they like destroying those. And then Hillman Hunters. Let's talk about Hillman Hunters. Again, a sort of rival to the Cortina at the time. Christopher Aniston, who was later in the bill.
Right, yes.
So he appeared in Private Man's Public Danger, and in one scene you can see his Hillman Hunter, because it's actually his Hillman Hunter. He was asked to use it for the shot. They were obviously, like, British Leyland had let them down once again and not provided the car, so they had to improvise. And so the white Hillman Hunter that you see, which is a 72 model, I think, 72, 73, TOY 651M, that was Christopher Aniston's own car that you see him coming. It's Thorpe Park is where it is. It's now obviously a theme park. It was it's like a place, a water sports centre at the time.
So I take it that they probably rewrote the script so they didn't blow it up. Yeah,
it wasn't blown up, but in No Stone, which was the last episode of Professionals ever to be transmitted in 1983, there is a 1968 Hillman estate. Now, at the time, they weren't even called the Hunter or the Mix, because they were originally sold on the Mix and Hunter, the arrow shape Roots cars. This is just called the Hillman estate. It's a 68 because they did a search on the plate, I think, someone, and they said no, the plate's fake. So that was blown up at the end of No Stone, wasn't it? By the bomb squad.
Oh yes, yeah.
Spectacular fashion. Yeah. There's also an old Hillman Hunter in Cry Wolf. It's another late episode of Series 5. There is a Hillman Hunter in the Public Interest from Series 2.
They were just disposable. The Hillman Hunters had a Roots engine.
That's right, 1725cc.
Engines were absolutely the most unreliable engines around. I remember my dad had one, and he could never ever get the thing to start. He sold it because he couldn't get it. It wouldn't start. It would never ever start. They were extremely unreliable. So they were a very cheap, very disposable car by that point. Yeah. And you could just go out with £100, get yourself a Hunter, blow it up, demolish it, everything else. Yeah. You just lost £100. Probably what you'd hire a car for a week.
I mean, a significant thing about these Hunters is that in one of the later episodes, A Stirring of Dust. Sorry, it's season 2, not a related one. There is a Chrysler Hunter, which was made in Ireland. It's a '78 Chrysler Hunter, and this is probably one of the only film records that they have of a Chrysler Hunter. It's only used in one scene, and you know, I can't talk about all the cars of Professionals, otherwise we'd be here for about 3 weeks.
Forever.
But if you want to see that in the Stirring of Dust, you'll see it CLE. I think it says CLE 720T or something like that. It's a car that's used by the villains very briefly.
Oh dear.
Gosh. Don't know what's happened with that alarm. We'll have to just wait for someone to come and switch it off.
I think
Right, we'll have to sort of continue with the window that page. Hopefully, it's not too
we'll have to
noisy. Okay, that's all right. That's fine.
reset.
I do apologise. I'll see if I can cut that bit out of my YouTube editor. If not, I apologise. So let's talk about Honda Civic and the Mark 1 Honda Civic.
I don't remember that. I don't. I'm trying to remember what it looks like now.
In the episode First Night.
Yes, I do remember the Mark 1 Civic. Yes.
For some reason, when Dawn has to go around and try to find a particular place where Arnold Diamond is being held hostage, he doesn't go around in his own RS2000. He goes around in a female CI operator's car, which was a 1977 Honda Civic.
Was that blue?
Yeah, it was blue, yeah. They're very small little cars, the Mark ones. I saw actually one at Bromley Pageant in my video the other day. This one's XGK 598S. Do you remember ever seeing those in the period, Andy?
I do, yeah, I do remember them. Again, they were a very different car, weren't they? They weren't. I think cars. We've come to a period in time now where the styling of cars is actually broadly very similar, but back then things were different, and yeah, the Honda Civic was a very different car. I remember there was a lot of chrome on it.
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
it was there was a lot of chrome on it, and it had a very Japanese look to it. You know, there was a kind of a style that Japanese cars had, and they were quite chrome heavy. And it was a small car,
very small car,
which was right for the time because of course fuel was expensive, and there was a trend towards smaller, more economical cars. But do you know what? I don't think I've ever been for a driving one. I've never been in one. I've seen them. But I've never been inside one.
Well, apparently the Honda Heritage Fleet actually have one of those on the fleet, and I think our friends at Planet Auto, they recently did an NSX. They might get hold of one of those, so maybe they'll tell us what it's like. Should be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have a driving one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about Lancia Beaters. Lancia had a bit of reputation at the time for being absolutely the most unreliable car in the world. But for some reason, they used a couple of them in Professionals in blood sports. One of them is like a plot point. I mean, it's a car that an assassin uses and takes the tactics out of their quarter light so they can shove a telescopic rifle through the hole, and actually that tactic doesn't belong to the car, which is hilarious in itself. Bloodsports is a series 4 episode. That one's WLX672S. That part of that was filmed in Boreham Wood, actually. The place where they go to defuse the bomb which left under the car is what used to be called the Thatch Barn, next to the A1 in Boreham Wood, which isn't too far from here. In High to Nothing, there is also another Lancia Beater, this time a Berliner, which is a saloon, which is ELF64T, which I imagine might have been supplied by Lancia. What did you think of the Lancia Beaters, Andy, apart from the fact that they, disintegrated into a pile of rust shavings in no time?
They were a very square car, and they were almost, not style-wise, but in that kind of bracket, they were almost interchangeable with another car like an Alfa Sud. Different shape, different manufacturer, but the issues with the cars were very much the same.
Yeah.
Yes, they did have horrific rust problems, and they also had mechanical problems as well. They weren't very reliable cars. They were temperamental Italian cars. I remember they were still quite a square car. The Delta was the the subsequent smaller one, wasn't it?
That's right. It came out in '79, but the ones that we remember are the Integrale, which was late '80s, early '90s.
And incidentally, if you happen to have one of those, it's worth a fortune.
Oh yes.
If you don't, hard luck. I don't either.
You don't, do you?
But yeah, it was another one of those cars that was, I think it was kind of had a middle spec to it, didn't it? It was like a middle specification car. It wasn't really high spec, and it wasn't a super basic car. A very square car, the sort of car you'd have for I suppose it was the equivalent type of car to say a Vectra.
Yeah.
You might not even remember what a Vectra is if you're
We'll
watching.
have
to do another. We'll have to do another program on the Vectra.
Yeah, oh gosh, yes, of course. So yeah, it's funny just seeing them in that sort of context. I saw a couple of Lancia coupes, including an HPE, which was the sort of hatchback one, at the Goodwood Retro Rides Gathering, which was in May. That was really nice.
I mean, these cars, to put them in context, once it was a disposable car, once you'd had your 6 years out of it, and it had been welded up and filled up and everything, you then took it to a scrapyard and scrapped it. It was a disposable car, so very, very few of these cars have survived. So to go out and find one of those is a lot harder than going out and finding a Capri.
Yeah,
it's a lot rarer car.
It's much rarer. Let's talk about the car that actually we see at Latchable Heath in the episode It's Only a Beautiful Picture. Do you remember what that is, Andy? It's a red estate car. Do you remember it? It's only in that episode.
I will. Tell me, Joseph.
It's a 1980 Opel Record DL. Because at the time, Opel and Vauxhall sold cars in Britain.
Right.
It wasn't just Opels on different badges, what Vauxhalls are now. Yes. There was different ranges. I mean, the car was based on the Vauxhall Carlton, but it was actually different.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
we've had some movement.
Slight
camera movement
there.
We'll
just adjust that. There we go. We're okay now. So, what do you ever drive one of those, Andy, or do you know much about those?
It wasn't a big car, was it? The Record. It was a small.
No, it was. It's a large car.
Was the Manta the larger one?
The Manta was the coupe, but the Record's like a sort of Vauxhall Carlton estate type thing. Right.
Sorry, it's not the one that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
I don't remember that one.
Okay, well, that one's NKX 454W. Let's talk about Porsches. Funnily enough, there were 3 Porsche press cars used in the latest series of the Professionals. There was a Porsche 924 Turbo used in the Untouchables, which is FDP 110V. In Crywolf from the 5th series, there was a 924 Lux, HTF 355W, and in No Stone, again the last episode they ever broadcast, there was a 1982 911 SC, OPR 911. Clearly that's a press car, isn't it? What did you think of Porsches about that sort of era? I mean, for years the 924 was really cheap. I remember the first series of Wheeler Dealers, they bought a 924 for about £500 or something and did it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that now.
Yeah.
They weren't sort of the same. They were probably very expensive, weren't they, at the time?
Well, the 924 was the entry level Porsche. The 924 was like a Porsche body shell with Audi mechanicals. It had an Audi engine in it. It had various bits of dials and equipment inside that weren't traditional Porsche items. So it was the car where some people regarded it as a poor man's Porsche, as a cheap Porsche, as not a purebred Porsche. And I suppose all of them were right. And because of that, for many years, it was a car that was derided. People laughed at you because you got a Porsche, but you hadn't got a real Porsche. It was almost like wearing fake clothes. The real Porsche was, of course, the 944, the 928, the 911. Those, then you were on the money and you had the real deal. But like all things, and especially things that get derided, they come into fashion. And yes, there's now more interest in the 924. People, especially the turbo, people are appreciating it for what it was. And there's a, if you've got a good one with a nice interior and the right engine, then you're on the money. And again, I think Porsches of that time were very much associated with being on the money. You were somebody who was making
very
loads
wealthy person.
of money if
Yeah.
you had a 911 turbo, and it was a very flashy car. I mean, you couldn't imagine. There were very bright colours used on the car. The red was so red it hurt your eyes. There was big whale tail on the turbo models, which sat on the back of the car. That was huge. It was a quarter of the size of the car. The whale tail. It was absolutely, you could not miss it. You could not mistake that you were the guy driving around in a 911 turbo. So they had that connotation. The handling was good, but again, if you got in the wrong circumstance,
Like a Capri, isn't it? It's
the
kind of like
the thing
that,
would
yeah.
kill you.
Yeah.
And especially in the turbo, because you were going so quickly. I remember being sat I'd walked out of a pub by a lake with my girlfriend, and we were just stood outside having a chat before we sort of moved on, and somebody had started up a 911 turbo and was at the junction next to us, and it was just ticking along and there wasn't much noise. All of a sudden he wanted to impress his girlfriend and he floored the accelerator. I'm not joking, the noise, the wail was just unbelievable. I nearly jumped out of my skin, it deafened me. They were very, very screeched off. They were very, very impressive cars, without a doubt. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in no stone, the 911 SC is used by like a corrupt lawyer. I mean, obviously, he's going to take a few backhanders. It's a very appropriate car for him to drive. Let's talk about some more British Leyland cars. With this sort of weird bit we've talked about in the first part, that, you know, they were between sort of British Leyland and Ford.
Yeah.
In one shot of Private Man is Public Danger, the first episode of British Leyland broadcast, the Rover wasn't available, and the Granada hadn't arrived yet. So what they had to do was hire from, I think, Kingsbury Motors, which is a very, very famous name in television and film of the 60s and 70s, if you ever heard of it. They had to hire a Princess, and it wasn't even a very nice one. It was an 1800 HL Princess for John Dress to turn up in, and when there's an accident in the middle of Slough, it's caused by someone taking drugs and crashing in Allegro, he turns up in this 77 Princess VLM 60S. You just sort of see it. It was like a red one, and you know, there's another Princess as well in Heroes from the first series. It's just literally there kind of filling in, because they had to sort of improvise and think, well, we have to have BL products, but BL themselves can't supply them, so we have to get them somewhere else. And I think that sums it up, really.
The Princess was a car, wasn't it? It was,
Yeah.
It was so ironic. It's a bit like having a little Chihuahua and naming it Killer. Princess was such an unlikely name for that car because it was not a pretty car. It was not a good-looking car. So they gave it the name Princess to try and counteract the ugliness and the brutalness of the car, which was a wedge-shaped car. It was literally it was like that. I always see the irony when someone says Princess.
I saw Princess 2 at the Money Pageant on the Hubnut stand last weekend, and you know, I met the owner of it, and they had no classic interest for such a long time. No, not at all. But now, because of the styling, not like the TR7, you know,
Yes,
the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
They have just this amazing look about them. I mean, in period, they were a bit of a weird thing to have, but I mean, these days they are proper classics.
They stood out as a very awkward-looking car, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, the Austin Ambassador, to be honest, I think is even worse than that.
And they were at a point in time when British Leyland was trying to build cars as cheaply as possible, and they were anything to save a few pennies.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did with the Princesses, the floor pans of the car were actually not welded in; they were glued in. And subsequently, when there was a little bit of rot and rust appeared in the car, as it was bound to, the floors dropped out.
Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff.
They had a very, very bad
Yeah,
reputation.
It's just mad, isn't it? The other British Leyland car that I remember from the first series we haven't talked about it yet is a Triumph Stag. It's a very early one, and for some reason they supplied like a sort of later it was 77 by that stage, but
Yeah.
they provided a 1970 model, which is RVC45H, which is similar to the one they used in Diamonds Off Leather. That one was yellow, this one's brown,
Yeah.
which is used in the episode Long Shot. If you remember that one. Stags is so affordable. I mean, there's loads around. I saw Sony probably pageant in there. And, like a really top one is only, I don't know, £7,000 to £10,000.
Yeah.
A sort of half decent one's about £5,000. It's amazing that the Capri is gone stratospheric, whereas this would have been a more expensive car than the Capri at the
absolutely.
time.
And more and at the time and subsequently.
Yeah.
A more desirable car. It's only as time's kind of gone on that this graph's intersected, and things have gone the other way. But the Stag was I've always thought a very beautiful car, a very pretty car. When you look at it from the front, you notice straight away that it's a Rover 2000 TC. It's like they've made a Rover 2000 TC convertible, but it's much more than that. So from the front, it's not the prettiest car, but as you go round it, it is a beautiful car, and it is a very pretty car, and it is a very imposing car as well, and it has a look and a style which is all of its own, which is quite retro, and nobody's done anything quite like it. There's no copies of the Stag that you'll find out there, and it was available in a range of colours, which
loads of crazy colours.
You've got the purples,
yeah.
You've got the canary yellow.
Yeah.
You've got white ones, you've got black ones, and then you've got the kind of the burnt orange one, it's like a flame red. So the colours were very retro as well. And I think they probably look best in yellow, but with a black interior, a very pretty car. Unbelievable that they're still so affordable. If you want an affordable classic now that's reliable and that isn't going to let you down, you could do a lot worse than go and buy yourself a Triumph Stag, and you'd have loads of fun, open top motoring in it. Yeah, lovely car.
Yeah, and obviously you've got to make sure that 3-litre V8 engine is in good order, because they weren't known for being most reliable in period, but sort of these days I think that they've probably been fixed to some extent. So
there was a lot of talk of them overheating.
Yeah, they used to overheat, didn't they?
Yeah, they used to overheat. But there's loads if you go and do a search, there's loads of people produce cooling kits for them that allegedly fixes that little issue.
Yeah. So that's enough about British Leyland. Let's talk about the car that they love to blow up, which would be the Vauxhall FD Victor and Ventura. In a man called Quinn from the 5th series, there's a 68 Vauxhall Ventura, WYF 551G. You can guess what happened to that one, Andy.
But they just dragged them out of the scrapyards and loaded them up with Gelignite, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what happened to that one. In an episode Mixed Doubles, which is I think a 4th series episode as well.
I like that, a favourite. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a Vauxhall Victor 600 Super, which is YJH341K. Do you remember what happens to that one, Andy?
Got blown up.
It doesn't get blown up, it gets hit with a massive, sort of big shell around, and it's sort of the engine kind of, starts blowing smoke and things. I don't think you see it as a fireball, but it definitely dies in spectacular fashion.
It's on its way.
It's on its way. In the purging of CI5, there's a 72 Vauxhall Ventura with some interesting wheels on it. They actually use a body double for the car. They blow that one up, of course,
right, yeah.
with 2 agents supposedly inside. Now the actual car that they used for the plate, FYR 538K, that survived. They must have blown another one up with significant damage on the front end. One that doesn't actually get blown up, but is used by some villains in the Acorn Syndrome, again filmed in this sort of area of the world, is a 71 Victor SL FYY 190J. It looks so like that car from Randall Hogget Deceased. But
it must
gold.
be the same one.
It's not because that was white. This is gold.
Right.
But it looks very similar in many ways. So yeah, they love to blow up old Vauxhalls. It's a lot like the people who made bugs who used to blow up Rover 800s all the time.
Yeah.
They blew up about 3. Hello. Interesting Audi R8 there.
Owned by Ron, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, owned by Ron. So a couple of these sort of more interesting cars we see sort of briefly in Professionals. There's a Skoda 120 in Hijack, a 77 model, which is owned by like a
120 Estelle.
It wasn't called the Estelle at the time.
Was it not?
Just 120.
It
looks like an Estelle. Then in Involvement and Wild Justice, there are two Suzuki LJ80s, which are like the Jimneys of their time. In Involvement, there's one that's AGF 220S, it's a white one. And in the same episode, there is a yellow one that's GGN 810T that's also used in Wild Justice. That's a Toyota motorbike trailer. In Kickback, there's a Triumph 1300, which is the ancestor to the Dolomite. Was LJY 657H, which is sort of brown colour that gets involved in a chase with Doyle's Capri. And also in the same episode, there's a Fiat X19. Because they're Italians, therefore they must drive a Fiat. It's MLR 740V. I wouldn't be surprised if that was supplied by Fiat. And then we'll talk about a couple more Triumphs. We alluded to in the last episode about Man Without a Past and a Triumph 2.5 PI that's involved in a chase, which doesn't end very well for the Triumph, being driven by Ed Bishop from UFO.
Oh, wow.
That is P&M 565J. Do you remember that chase from Man Without a Past?
Oh, I'm struggling with that one. I'm struggling with that one. No, I don't. Sorry, Joseph.
So that's actually what happens is that Doyle, he sees in his rearview mirror the Triumph 2.5 PI being driven by two CIA men. One of them is Ed Bishop from UFO Captain Commander Straker, I should say. I don't want loads of comments from the UFO fans. I've had enough of those for a while because my Cars UFO video hasn't gone down very well. But essentially he's chasing them, and the 2.5 PI has this ridiculous roll angles at all these little tight corners.
I do remember that.
It's mad. And at the end, actually something happened. It was really bad. The car went out of control and crashed through a fence and almost killed the cameraman. You actually see it in the episode. It's a genuine accident. The stuntman overruns where he's supposed to go, and it sort of goes through a fence. It's pretty amazing. I like it. That's I suppose a kind of metaphor for what happened with British Leyland is that tried to keep up and they failed spectacularly, in fact. And there's other TR7s as well. There's about three more. The one that stands out to me, there's a couple of convertibles, but in Bloodsport there's a character called Helen Tippett, who's not known as such, who's just given a CIA number, and she has a TR7. A blonde lady in a TR7 is drowned to attract attention, just like in the New Avengers when Gerald Lumley had a bright yellow one, of course.
Yeah.
So there are many more cars we could talk about to do with Professionals, and that's just a small selection of the ones which stand out to me. But I think we'll probably end things there. So I hope you found that video informative. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more of the same. We are doing the Cars of the Avengers next, which will be a lot of fun. And don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. Please visit my website, which is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk if you wish for me to source a vehicle for you. It doesn't have to be anything I mentioned on this list. It's going to be something a bit more modern. And don't forget as well to visit my Facebook page for latest updates, which is facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. And thank you very much indeed once again for watching.